Oh, baby. Game week. 4 days out. Nebraska,
Finally.
Minnesota. They'll be kicking in 2 hours and 4 days from now in Minneapolis. Nebraska, of course, also playing volleyball, and they're doing it pretty well right now. They start 3-0. We'll talk some volleyball today. Tanya Taki will be on our show, former Husker volleyball player and a good one. She saw all 3 sweeps this weekend. It wasn't easy at times, but this is a talented team, and I can't wait to talk about Husker volleyball with Tanya Taki. We'll talk lots of Husker football with Steve Sipple in about 20 minutes from now. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens. Mike, how are you?
Doing good. Trying to recover from last night. It was fun. Went out to Eagle and was a part of the tow truck crew.
What's that like? What's that? Will you tow cars off the?
If there's a wreck on the track, you go out and you get the cars separated, and if they need a hook to go back up to the pit. I mean, I knew that those guys. I announced out there for 10 years. I know what they do. No, I didn't know exactly what they did. It was a learning experience. We're going to talk all about that on the finish line tonight. But other than that, man, watch the Blues Angels for 4 days fly over my house because I live up in that part of town.
Were those guys cool or what? I mean, There's nothing cooler than being in the stadium, I think, when the flyover over Memorial Stadium right before the tunnel walk. But they were really cool this weekend. Well, and it never gets old. I see them every year, but it never gets old.
They had 2 of their patterns that literally put them about a block and a half to 2 blocks south and a block and a half to 2 blocks north of my house.
Wow.
And then one of the big, massive ones that flew around, that bad boy like buzzed our rooftops, like literally went right over.
Buzzed the tower?
Yeah. So it was pretty neat from where we sat. We actually sat in the driveway yesterday in the shade, just had the bag chairs out, had some lunch.
I bet you weren't the only one that did that.
Oh,
That's
no,
awesome.
some other neighbors did too.
That's great. Let's get to the starting gate. We try to feed you as many stories during the show as we possibly can that happened in Husker Nation during the week. And for the starting gate, here's Mike.
All righty, let's start off with some actual game results. How about that?
There were games this weekend.
Nebraska volleyball gets off to a 3-0 start with a sweep of Utah State on Friday, 25-20, 17-17, against Lipscomb yesterday, 25-10, 21-16, and then earlier today against SMU, 25-16, 23-16. Next up in front of 90,000 rabid Nebraska volleyball fans at Memorial Stadium Wednesday night. It is going to be the Nebraska Cornhuskers and UNO Mavericks on Volleyball Day in Nebraska. I'll just tell you right now, Bergen Riley and Harper Murray are insanely talented young ladies.
Andy Jackson.
Yeah, she had a couple of plays today.
She didn't play in the first game, so I didn't know much about her. I didn't know anything about her until I saw her the last 2 games. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and then you sit there and you look at last year's returning starter, Becca Alec, and the plays that she made, and you're just like, okay, then we have a little depth.
How do you decide who to sit?
I don't know.
That battle between Krause and Bettenhorst is going to be interesting. Jackson and Mendelson, the battle there.
Well, Becca Alec's in the middle of it as well.
No, Becca Alec, she's a starter. Who's the other blocker? I mean, it's it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
The interesting thing is the adversity that they faced, and I would think that Coach Cook has got to be happy that they did face some adversity in the way they responded. They're down, what was it, 23-13 or something like that, or in the second set yesterday, and they roll off Harper Murray 9 straight points off the service line.
By the way, she was not playing great last night, and then she gets to the service line and just goes off.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a service run like that.
There was a couple. There was a couple last year, and it was Lexi Rodriguez that was doing it.
Right, and that's an experienced server there. Harper Murray is just at a different level.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that kind of talent at Nebraska since, I don't want to say Jordan Larson, but my God, Jordan Larson?
Yeah. Well, she reminds me, though, as hard as she hits the
Michaela
ball,
Fecchi,
Michaela Fecchi.
that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
I think she's more athletic than Fecchi.
I think she might be as well. Well, you know what? The perfect person to ask is going to be Tanya Talkie, and we'll do that in about 40 minutes.
Sure.
Elsewhere, just announced today, the last 3 single-digit uniform numbers have been awarded. Quentin Newsom will be number 6. Not really a surprise there. Ty Robinson will wear 9 this year. Not necessarily a surprise because of who he is and what he's meant to this program and how he's bought into this program in his time here. And then Deshaun Singleton, a bit of a surprise.
That's the big one for me.
Yeah, he's going to wear number 8. Yeah, those two are the ones. But again, this is guys that are supposed to be starters, or they're the most valuable, or they're the whatever. These are guys that epitomize Nebraska football. They're the toughest. They're the guys that you be one of these guys, you're going to be one of the 10 best players on the team, regardless of position.
But the thing
voted on by their teammates.
I mean, Rula said John Bullock, he thinks he's an NFL player. He said about Deshaun Singleton, he's never had a safety quite like him. That big, that fast, that athletic, all of that.
Go back about a decade, and he was talking about Hassan Reddick that nobody knew, and he said, I think he's an NFL player. Yeah. Well, guess what? So that was interesting. Those 3 donned black shirts as well today. I did not hear if the rest of the black shirts were handed out, but those 3 were wearing black shirts. The 2 Deep was released on Friday. You and I will go over that here in a bit. Let's try to get to a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
Monday, the football team moved into the new locker room. Holy smokes. That place.
It's pretty cool.
There's the Four Seasons right now is on the phone going, yeah, can we get a tour? we need to improve our place, man.
It's like going into the new house and you don't want to touch anything. And then you realize it's yours. Yeah. You can touch that stuff.
Yeah. Nebraska baseball added to its 2024 class this week when two-way standout from Oklahoma City, Bryce Pender, committed to Will Bolt. Let's see. Michigan announced that Jim Harbaugh is going to be suspended for the first 3 games of the upcoming season. We'll see what the NCAA says about that. They may extend it. Also, it was announced today, actually, that Arizona State is going to self-impose a 1-year bowl ban for gratuitous and repeated recruiting violations by former head coach. Some have called him the worst hire in the history of the Pac-12 Conference, Herm Edwards, and his staff over his tenure there. Bottom line, college football's back, baby. Notre Dame over in Ireland, 42-3 over Navy yesterday. And another interesting little side story, the Big Ten is going to require teams to issue game day availability reports 2 hours or more before kickoff. I kind of like that rule.
I do too.
And then earlier today as well, Connor Booth from Wahoo, I believe he plays for Newman, commits to the 2025 class. He is a fullback / running back, but he's also one hell of a baseball player, and he's going to play both sports at Nebraska. But all kinds of things going on. And I know with our 3 guests that we got lined up today, we want to make sure we give all of them all of their ample time. So what do you want to dive into here in this opening segment? Because that is going to kind of wrap up the starting gate. Do we want to do 2 deep? Do we want to do single digits?
I think single digits are a good place to start. We could talk maybe a little bit about the depth chart as well. Not a big surprise. The guys, I guess the 3 that surprised me of the guys that got the single digit, I didn't know that Nash Hutmacher would get one. I always thought he had the potential to get one, or be a star on this football team, but he hasn't been so far. He hasn't had a lot of experience in a Nebraska uniform. For him to get one was a bit surprising, but they don't have a lot of options at D tackle. Ty Robb, not at all surprising. Newsom, not surprising. You had Kemp, you had Gifford, you had Nick Henrich, Luke Reimer. None of those are a surprise. I think we thought Jeff Sims would get one. He did. I think we thought that that Ty Robinson might get one, and he did. Deshaun Singleton, big surprise for me. He didn't play last year. And then Miles Farmer gets suspended. He leaves the program, jumps into the transfer portal, and you need a safety. It's Deshaun Singleton. Of all the options, he wasn't necessarily the guy that I thought would even be a starter. Well, and then he gets a single digit.
But I want to throw this out. One of the things that Matt Rule has hung his hat on, and that you genuinely feel like he is more proud of his past success, not necessarily in the wins and losses, but in the development of players on the field and off. I mean, he talks about it openly, and developing players, developing talent, developing good human beings. And Deshaun Singleton's a guy that just kind of got lost in the shuffle last year. Guess what? Matt Rule came in, gave everybody open opportunities, and they developed Deshaun Singleton into a guy that is obviously one of the leaders of the team.
You know what his body reminds me of? Miles Farmer. A missile. But he's 6'3", 205. Who's that? Miles Farmer.
Yeah.
But he didn't play a lot. Give Travis Fisher some credit. He was not heavily recruited out of junior college. Nebraska targeted Travis Fisher, saw something in him. And I think Travis Fisher, if there's one coach that I might miss a little bit, it's Travis Fisher, because he's, I think, a really good defensive backs coach. But then, Singleton shows up on campus, probably gets nothing out of last year, and then a lot of something out of the start of this year to the point where he gets a single digit. John Bullock is the other one. In fact, thank goodness for the Bullock boys.
Yeah.
Both of them.
They both earned scholarships.
Of course, his brother is playing wide receiver and might be a star, according to what Matt Rule has said about him. And knowing that you need receivers with what's happened to the receiving core.
Well, and I think you're going to see Alex Bullock on the field for Nebraska's first offensive play from scrimmage in 2024 or 2023. I think he will be on the field as a starter because Marcus Washington is just now getting back into full participation with practice. Both extremely talented, but bottom line, man, you get an opportunity, take advantage of it. I want to point something out that I noticed in reading through a couple of the articles. Tom Chattel had a fantastic one today. Amy Just had a fantastic one. She kind of previewed her article today last week on our show when she said, "I'm sick of preseason. Can we please play a game?"
That's exactly what she said.
But Tom Chattel and Sam McEwen as well had an article. They all kind of spun the same thing. Somehow about, the new rules or rules of engagement, whatever it is. But they all had a kind of a spin on Matt Rule and his rules. And all the things that you hear time and time again, day by day, 1% better, all the little things, dominant contact and violence and effort and all the acronyms that they have. OOU, one of us, everything. And they all say it and they all buy in and they all believe it. And the attention to detail, and in the articles, several of them talked about detail, most minute, tiny detail. They are worried about it. I asked a question of a member of last year's staff on the block party. I said, we all know that there's a bunch of tiny details that fans probably don't notice. Can you share with us some of them? And I was laughed at, and I was told, you know what? If they don't know the tiny details, then I don't need them playing football for me. I need them to be able to do that without thinking.
Right?
Really? That's what you think? You think you don't need to coach them the fine details, that they should just know them? That's an interesting comment, but Mr. Former coach.
But the way you get to details is actually doing it. And rather than just being in the film room, Rule has made an emphasis of going back to the Osborne era to some extent. And I know all coaches have talked about it. Bo Pelini's, hey, we want to include the walk-on. We want our scholar. We want our roster big. We want to get to 150. That's not as important to me as the way Osborne did it. And that's reps in practice.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big deal. The way this is all panned out, why you found the Deshaun Singletons, the John Bullocks, is that you gave the older guys their reps in the early practice, the younger guys their reps in the other practice, in the later practice. Now, that takes a lot of effort from coaches to do that. And I think they've talked about 5,000 reps. Luke Reimer has talked about it. Hey, I should be good at it. We've done it 5,000 times. Yeah. And that's the way T.O. got guys really good at it. Not just, watching the film and breaking the stuff down during meetings, but actually doing it. Yeah. Everybody gets better by doing anything, hands-on, by being very hands-on. And I think you have a couple of guys on this depth chart that maybe you did, like Cam Linhart. Does he show up under the old staff on this depth chart? I know he was recruited by the old staff, and thank goodness the new staff saw something in him as well. I think Matt Rule has called him an old soul. But he's an oar on this depth chart, and he stepped in, and Prince Umo, how do you say it?
Uman
Mielen. I think he's a guy that will play a lot as he gets more experience. I think you're going to see some younger guys, because of the reps they've gotten in this fall camp, get reps during the season, especially as the season gets 4 or 5 games in.
The other thing is I'm assuming you've watched the third episode of From the Inside.
I have.
Okay. 60 minutes this time, not 30.
Yeah.
The one thing that stands out to me more than anything from all of these practice videos that we're seeing that are in these fantastic videos put out by Husker Vision in the athletic department is the practice videos. There was a couple of plays where you see guys getting blown up. You see a defensive tackle catching a running back going around the edge, and like he throws him to the ground with violence. It is just like a game. And Matt Rule alluded to the fact that they play with speed, they play with pace, they play full speed, right?
Yeah.
And he alluded to the fact if you don't play full speed, that's when you get hurt. And you sit there and, everybody collectively, a couple of knocks on wood here. But I don't remember a preseason camp that Nebraska came out of more healthy. But guys, I believe in it. You go full speed, I get it. There's some contact. But guess what? If you recover properly.
You have the Maverick Noonan injury, and there was one other. Marcus Washington got injured, but he's back. There was one other that I'm trying to think of, but other than that,
the other one, Brody Tagaloa, was a car accident. It was. He wasn't injured on
Maverick
the field.
was injured, I think, in a freak accident during practice.
Yeah,
but there 2 injuries, and that's amazing that you get through fall camp and that happening, especially as physical. We've seen other camps where even under Bo Pelini, where they tried to go a little safer. There wasn't a lot of contact, and they still had guys injured. Yeah. So you might as well go full contact because there's going to be that freak injury anyway. That's what I've appreciated. And it seems like the details are being covered at a higher level. You have the Tuesday night practice, which I don't remember Nebraska doing before. Maybe they have done that before. They're very into walkthroughs. They want to get guys on the field and walk through different situations rather than just being in meeting rooms and trying to go through different scenarios. They have practiced every situation. Hey, it's 3rd and 8. You've got a kind of a cough and you're limping. What do you do? Here's the play. Obviously I'm being a little silly there, but they have gone through so many different scenarios. And Rule said, I used to call out a situation, and maybe a couple of guys would raise their hand as far as what play might be called. He says now, 90% of the dudes are raising their hand. So it feels like they think they're ready. And I don't think that's always been the case, especially, starting with a team like Minnesota, where you don't always feel very ready.
You better be ready to get punched in the mouth because that's what's going to happen first play.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's the thing though, is it's everything you see, everything you literally get to see video of practice and the way they practice. I'm just like, that's the way to do it. Like, I get why people would want to be a part of this.
Let's get to break early. Yep. I definitely want to talk to Sip. He wrote a great column on Rule's emphasis on winning now, because the knock on Rule in the past has been, you're a builder, but it takes some time. Look at the time it took at Temple. The first year was a disaster. Look at the time it took at Baylor. The first year was a disaster. I don't think that's the message this year. I think the expectation is to win now. And all these other topics, Ted Carter leaving the school, that's something that we definitely will talk to Sip about, and this single digits, all of them being handed out now. Steve Sipple of the Lincoln Journal-Star. Lincoln Journal-Star, I haven't said that in years. He hasn't been there in a year and a half, for crying out loud. Of course, of Husker Online, Steve Sipple, and of Early Break with Sip Jake and Bill Bush. We'll talk to him next.
At Parkview Animal Hospital in Lincoln, it's not just the professional care that sets them apart, but their warm staff and state-of-the-art facilities. Whether it's for a routine checkup or a comprehensive medical procedure, at Parkview, your pet isn't just another number, but a valued member of their caring family. Visit them at pahlincoln.com today and in person just south of 14th and Pine Lake Road. Parkview Animal Hospital, your pet, our passion. For happier, healthier furry friends.
My dream was to work in commercial banking, but it required a college degree and I didn't have one. I found out that Doane had classes for adult learners on the Lincoln campus and online. So I earned my bachelor's degree, and 5 months later, I landed my dream job. I decided to continue my education, and now I'm working on my MBA at Doane. For me, the Doane experience has been life-changing.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket every Saturday morning now in our new time. We're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
Start your Sundays off right with Jeff and Nicole Essink on Fitness Fanatics. Jeff and Nicole discuss health and wellness, how to achieve fitness goals, and more through the life of gym owners and gym goers. It's Fitness Fanatics from 9 to 11 a.m. on Sundays on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Beep, beep, beep. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back.
It is Husker Rewind here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. I am Mike Melby, Tom Stevens in the other room. As we like to say in the radio business, he is efforting Mr. Stephen M. Sipple from Husker Online, the On3 Network. And what's the verdict, Mr. Stevens?
Nothing yet, but I'm sure once he hears me talking about it on the air. This always happens. I blame myself because a lot of guests I'll get like on a Thursday and Friday. And then they always say, remind me. And I don't think Steve said remind me, but he should, because I would need to be reminded, right?
Well, I know I would.
He's got things going on.
So
I texted him, and I'm guessing the phone line will be ringing like in 5, 4, 3, 5. Maybe not. Maybe not.
And that's the whole thing. Like when Sip jumps on, it'll be interesting to see where we, because you and I were talking during the break. Where do we go here? Do we want to talk single digits? Do we want to talk Nebraska volleyball? Do we want to talk a couple of black shirts are out there? Do we want to talk can we expect from PJ Fleck in Minnesota? Where do we want to go with it? And just kind of let him take his pick of the potpourri. But all of them are such great topics, and it's exciting to finally be in game week too. That's the other thing. That's the thing I liked most about Amy Just's article this morning is finally.
I mean, we were done. I mean, I don't think I could have gone 2 more weeks with not talking about a game. And finally, we do have something. A game. And the fact that it's not just a game. It's not Louisiana Tech. It's not Roast Beef State. It's Minnesota. A team that is 5-1 against you, that has dominated you. And it's also a team that I'd kind of like to, we always talk about Wisconsin, the teams in the West that we kind of like to be alike. Minnesota's in that group as well. They've got 9-3 the last couple of years. PJ Fleck has rebuilt that program. And I know they've got a lot of holes to fill along the offensive line, but that's a program that I admire. They run the ball. They stop the run. They dominate time of possession. I think they were 4th in the Big Ten in scoring last year. They only averaged 28 points a game, but you couldn't get the ball back from them.
Yeah, but and the funny thing is they were 4th in the Big Ten in scoring at 28 points per game, which ranked what in overall in college football? Like
65th.
65th, yeah.
But 4th in the Big Ten. They were, I think, number 1. And in fact, that you've got the stats right there on the right side. Here, actually, let me have that.
You want this one?
That one and that one.
And that one.
I'll go through the
We
stats.
switched sides, so.
I'll go through the stats with you. Because these are always interesting to me. Nebraska was not really good in any of these stats. I mean, nationally. They're okay in some of the stats in the Big Ten. But the highest they were ranked nationally was 6th in punt returns, which I'm surprised by.
We didn't return many, but when we did, we had success.
That must have been, was that Trey that was returning punts last year? But Nebraska wasn't
I don't
good.
remember.
But the stats that Minnesota was good in last year, they were 8th nationally in total defense. They were 4th in scoring defense. They were 3rd in third down offense. And I know Rule has made a big point of that. They were 5th in third down defense. They were 1st in penalties committed. They didn't penalize themselves. They never got penalized. And they were 3rd in penalty yards. So if you want to run the ball, which they were good at, stop the run, be good on third down. Why are you good on third down? You have 3rd and 1. And they were good. They were a lot of times they would go on 4th down as well to get it. They're a scary team. And that the worst loss I think of the Frost era is PJ Fleck bringing 33 guys into Lincoln, Nebraska.
Or minus 33.
They had 33 guys minus on the protocol of COVID, or they were either injured or had COVID, and they still bullied Nebraska. They won that game, I think, 20 to 13.
2013, yep.
Nebraska just always found a way. There was a year, I think it was 2019, might have been 2021, where Nebraska they were dominating the game. They got on the 1 yard line, and for some reason, instead of quarterback sneaking it to Martinez, they hand it to a guy that hadn't seen the ball much all year. He fumbles it at the 1 inch line, and Nebraska loses that game. And they just found so many different ways to lose. But Minnesota was the team that, even more than Iowa, that got in my craw, just because I didn't love PJ Fleck, but at the same time, I admired the way they played.
Well, and I totally agree. I mean, he's got a great plastic surgeon. Let's just lead with that for sure.
He looks great.
The one, but right before we jumped into break, I was going to bring up something, the old school comment, and I had to ask you who the coach was, but Mark Banker alluded to after a loss to Iowa that their practices must be bloodbaths.
Right.
And he got absolutely ridiculed for it. And, you're throwing your coach under the bus, on and on and on and on. And at the end of the day, it's like, was he actually throwing his coach under the bus, or was he, a little envious?
Right.
And then you look at the way Nebraska practices today, because we get to see some video from it, and it's like, holy smokes. This is the first time I've always had mental images when you hear Jay Foreman talk about, and Terrell Farley and Vershawn Jackson, about when practice was, that was the tough part of the week. The games were easy.
Right.
And if the program gets back to that, the practice habits they're developing this year, you understand why they said that.
Mm-hmm. I remember Jason Peter telling me a story about a practice they had, this Wednesday, Thursday practices, whenever they were, that you're talking about. They would have first team versus first team. And Jason Peter, they would put the ball on the 5 yard line, and it would just be a bloodbath.
Yep.
And there was one practice where Jason Peter gets through the line of scrimmage and either tackles Frazier or Behringer, somebody like that. A guy in a green jersey just pushes him down. And Milt Tennifer says something like, "There you go. Thursday All-American." Because and Saturday too, because none of your fat boys can block me. And he loved that. But they would get in those matches where they didn't like each other. Even though they usually walked off, good friends afterwards. But I think there was some nastiness that maybe is going on now. Intentionally, this fall camp was hard. Staying in Selleck Hall, the heat. I mean, last week was crazy hard. The Ethan Piper story where he lost 10 pounds even after rehydration.
Yeah.
These practices were intentionally really, really hard. The discipline has been really, really hard. Carrying the gallon jugs of water all around campus. It's been hard. And I think the whole purpose is to develop discipline, but the physicality has been there as well, I think.
Well, it is. And the other thing that stands out so much is Matt Rule's just genuine love for adversarial situations.
Yeah.
Being at Selleck sucked, but like everybody it was like they all were punishing each other to
Mhm.
make themselves better, and it was us against themselves, but themselves were the world. And
Right.
and he alluded to that. It's kind of an us against the world on the road. So he likes ugly locker rooms. He likes it when, they're painted pink, and there's a whole crowd against whatever team he's coaching. He's
Yeah.
like, that's it. That's our brotherhood. That's where, that's what we're trying to develop, is to have guys and have a team that has that attitude.
It feels like the details, and we've talked about this a lot, that have been missing in the past. And that's, I guess, something that I'm a little more confident. I wish we would have gotten Sipple on, because he talked about, and this is one of the things I was going to broach with Sipple, is he had meetings with various guys, and they were considering, the Luke Reimers and the Nick Henriches were considering moving on from Nebraska, as most players would when their coach leaves, Scott Frost, and they get this new guy in, Matt Rule. And I think it was Luke Reimer that said to him, or Nick Henrich that said to him, Coach, your track record is that you play a lot of freshmen in your first couple of years at a school. And if that's the case, maybe to paraphrase, maybe I should be moving on. And Matt Rule felt like, hey, these guys really want to win. These guys desperately want to win. I think he said that he's really enjoyed being around this team. And there are coaches maybe at Temple that he didn't always love being around, even though they were successful. Some guys didn't want to do the work, and these guys have wanted to do the work. And you see guys like Garrett Nelson that really desperately, never got it done, but he desperately wanted Nebraska to be back. I think the Nick Henriches and the Luke Reimers are in that same category. They desperately want to see this turned around because they've invested maybe a little bit more growing up being Nebraska fans.
That and it was interesting. One of the comments from the Big Red Brunch earlier this week that 93.7 The Ticket has partnered with the Omaha World Herald to put on, Trev and Coach T.O. were the featured speakers. And Trev he alluded to the fact that in order for us to get where we need to go, we have to lay ground rules. We have to lay down accountability of acceptable, unacceptable. And he said, there's a couple of guys that are no longer with our program, but we needed them to do things the way we need them done. And they chose to move on. And it stinks because we know they would have helped us win games. But at the same time, even this year, it's beneficial because we have everybody that's here that sees what it takes to get on the field, that sees what it takes to get single-digit numbers, to get the respect to your teammates. And ultimately, hopefully, we'll find out on Thursday night what it leads to wins.
Right. One of my favorite questions that Matt Rule was asked this week was, what do you think your team will do well? And he said, that's a good question. And he thought about it. And he said, well, I think we'll be physical. I think that if we get behind, we won't panic. I think if we get ahead, we won't celebrate. And I think we'll be tough. He didn't say, I think we'll win 8 games. I think Jeff Sims will be, second team all conference. I think, Gabe Ervin will have a great year. He didn't say any of those things. But that's where he went. And I like that. I mean, because if they're tough and if they have guys that they're willing to work hard, and I think that was one of the things I think we'll work hard. That's half the battle sometimes, because you've seen Nebraska teams, I don't want to say mail it in, but kind of mail it in at times. And if they can get through a season where you see them play, they're a tough team, they're a physical team, and that they're getting better. I guess that's one of the things I would also like to. I'm confident that we'll get better throughout the season, because Nebraska hasn't always gotten better game to game.
Not in the last 8 years. One of the things that was always something that as a young fan going through teenager, 20s, 30s, whatever, when Nebraska was having success, one of the things that I was more proud to be a Nebraska fan was when I would hear opposing coaches allude to the fact that the loss to Nebraska or the game against Nebraska cost them the next week's game, right? Because it was so physical. It took such a toll on them. And I get the feeling that, I mean, it may not happen this year, but I have a feeling we're going to hear an opposing coach say that in the next few years. There's 3 games that come to mind. I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking about this. I'm like, man, if you like old school, like just 2 heavyweights just throwing bombs, nobody's hands are up. There's no, whatever. And it's a defensive struggle, not just a scoring explosion type stuff. But you want old school smash mouth football. Nebraska, Minnesota, Nebraska, Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa. And although I think the talent level difference is pretty decent, just the styles of play, Nebraska, Michigan. Like those 4 games this year are literally going to be the definition of smash football.
Yeah, smash. Yeah, I've said this many times that I'd like for Nebraska to be more like Wisconsin or more like Minnesota as far as physicality, run the football, stop the run. Maybe a little bit of Iowa sprinkled in, although they don't run the football very well over the last couple of years, and their offense has been next to putrid. But Michigan is I don't think Nebraska realistically can be Ohio State. I think it just takes too many wide receivers to do that. But I think it's realistic in 4 or 5 years to say Nebraska should be Michigan, should be what Michigan has been over. And that, by the way, that's pretty good. They've beaten Ohio State the last couple of years, and they've made the college football playoff the last couple of years. But the way they play, maybe you don't get as many 4 and 5 stars, but look at their roster. They don't get a lot of 5-star. They get a lot of 4-star guys. They build the lines, and they just play fundamentally sound football. I think and Nebraska could have beaten Michigan
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago for sure. I think if you're looking for a target and what Nebraska should be, yeah, Wisconsin, Minnesota aren't bad, but Michigan is something that they should strive to be.
Yeah, and the funny thing is Michigan is just ground and pound, and they literally are just going to beat you up at the line of scrimmage, and they have some big play threat ability, etc. But the flip side, and this is where I think Nebraska differentiates themselves once the train really gets rolling, and you can see that Matt Rule's vision a little bit. It's not necessarily to just be that team that pounds it down your throat 100 times a game. The speed that they have at wide receiver, the sheer athleticism they have on the offensive side of the ball at skill positions, Thomas Fidone, Arik Gilbert, Nate Borkircher, Gabe Irvin, Ramir John, like these are not guys that are necessarily going to just be ground and pound guys. Granted, we don't have a Trey Palmer here this year, but there's 3 or 4 guys in the program right now that are freshmen that are receivers that all run under a 10-700. Are you kidding me? Yeah. This is going to be a big play offense at times this year, I think, and then moving forward. So they're going to be able to do what they need to do on the ground, but I still think Nebraska is going to have, some of that talent, some of that speed at receiver, tight end, and running back. It's going to be, I think, a more explosive offense than what Michigan has.
I want to do our predictions at the top of the hour, about 6 o'clock tonight. We need to get to break. Tanya Taki, will be on with us, former volleyball great, one of the best all time middle blocker for Nebraska back in the Terry Pettit era. She'll be on our show. She watched all 3 games this weekend. Steve texted me back.
What do you say?
I said, love your show. Listen every week. Fantastic show. He says he's here now. Should we try to move Tanya?
Well, hang on.
Is that Steve right there?
I believe it is.
Okay, we'll get that phone call, and we'll try to have Steve now and Tanya in the next segment.
Let's take a chance. Mr.
Steve?
Sipple, is this you?
Is that you, Steve?
Totally forgot about it.
There he is. No, it's my bad. He forgot about it, but we'll call him back. He forgot about it because I didn't give him a reminder. That's on me. Let's get to break and come back with more. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind. More after this.
There's a buzz in the air at Kansas. Maybe it's the roar of fans here at the track, or the anticipation of the playoffs as drivers fight to move on to the next round and keep their championship hopes alive. Maybe it's the pulse of the heartland, the thrill of speed, or the sounds of grills sizzling in the campgrounds. Whatever it is, it will be one memorable weekend. NASCAR Playoffs weekend at Kansas Speedway September 8th through the 10th. Get your tickets today at kansasspeedway.com.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay. Playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action. Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to Husker Rewind here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. I'm Mike Melby. That is Tom Stevens. If you're watching us on the live stream, it is the Sartor Heyman live stream on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. And we are also live on channel 951 on Allo. You want to be a part of the show, call or text 402-464-5685 on the Honda of Lincoln hotline or Sartor Heyman text line. Off the Sartor Heyman text line, Pecan Pie asks, hey guys, where do we see practice videos? As I was alluding to, we've seen videos from practice, and we are seeing them on the production that is coming out. You can see it on the YouTube channel for Nebraska Cornhusker stuff, and it is from the inside look at the practices. There's been 3 episodes so far. The first 2 were about 30 minutes. The last
kind
one
of
was
like
an
a
hour.
Hard Knocks,
a little bit of a
knockoff.
Hard Knocks type of a thing. But
Yeah.
you're seeing some stuff there that these are not thud practices.
No, they're not.
No. So, and I think we got everything squared away.
Yep.
And
he's here.
we are now going to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, one of the best writers I think I've ever read in my life, from Husker Online, the On3 Network, Mr. Stephen M. Sipple. Steve, how are you?
That's a little kind, Mike. I appreciate it.
Dude, the stuff you write is so good. And I like Amy just when she came back to Lincoln and all the stuff that she writes when she's took your place with the Journal Star. I'm just in awe of both you guys, man. I look so forward every time I see a new byline from one of you two.
Yeah, Amy's a premier writer. She really is.
I know we want to talk. We talked a little bit about it. Nebraska is now awarded all the single-digit numbers. Not a lot of them a big surprise. How surprised were you to see the name of Deshaun Singleton at number 8?
Well, I mean, I would have been surprised 2 weeks ago, but there's been so much talk, and Matt Rule has said, I mean, that he's just gushed about Deshaun Singleton in the last 6 or 7 days. For instance, on Matt's radio show, statewide radio show on Tuesday night, he talked about him and what he said was, paraphrasing, he said, he was a guy that was kind of, a little kind of buried a little bit on the depth chart, or, he's in that number 2 range. And then all of a sudden he kind of, he found a groove, and now he's one of the best players on the defense. So, and Singleton, I've met him. I did a one-on-one interview with him last summer, and he is really kind of strikingly mature, poised. Just you can tell, he was raised very well. He said something really interesting to me that stuck with me. Now I can see some people framing this up as being unappealing, but if you if you hear him, it's not. He treats this as a business. This is a business to him, and he wants to take it far, and he handles his business really well. I mean, he's just that type of guy. Then if you see him, if you're in your garage like me right now, and he walked in your garage, you'd say, "Phew, that's an athlete." No, that's an athlete. There's no mistaking that's a Division I. He's got to be something. I mean, maybe he's a pole vaulter or something, but okay, he's a safety, or all right, maybe he's a big guard on a Division I basketball team. Something. He's something. He's that type of guy. So, not surprised now. Would have been surprised a couple weeks ago.
Stephen M. Sipple from Husker Online, the On3 Network, joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. 8 of the 10 numbers are from the defensive side of the ball. I don't want to say is that surprising or not, because I don't think it's necessarily that surprising that there's that many guys that are that vocal and lead on the defensive side. But does it concern you at all that we didn't see more numbers from the offense?
Oh, I'd be lying if I said it's not something to pay attention to. I think that the whole camp has swung that way, and that what's happened over the course of August is that it okay, first scrimmage, what did Matt Rule say? He said initially, the defense dominated. Okay, that gets your attention, right? The second scrimmage, the defense played well. If you look at Tony White's demeanor and body language, tone of voice, and I've been doing this pretty long. I can kind of read. I can read. You guys are older guys too. You can read people sometimes. It's not always accurate. But I just thought Tony, as the weeks went on, I thought early in camp, he didn't project as much confidence as he did as camp went on. He's the defensive coordinator. Satterfield, on the other hand, I'm not saying he's not confident, but he seemed more concerned to me, and it's reflective of what we've heard from the head coach. So it all makes sense. And then when you add what you just said, that 8 of the single-digit jerseys are defense, I think the defense had a hell of an August, is what I'd say. Now, can they take that into September? That's the question, right? And then how does the offense, I don't want to say respond, but I don't know. There's not much I can say. Yeah. We just have to size it up for real on Thursday night.
Steve Sipple of Husker Online, presented by On3. You wrote about it, and the knock-on rule sometimes is he's a program builder, but it takes a while. I mean, he's willing to play a lot of young guys to get to years 2, 3, 4, and you talked about it in the article. It doesn't feel like that this time around. Like, he wants to win now.
Well, if he had said that, he's told that to some of the guys. He said that to, I think it was Andy Staples. He told Andy Staples, I believe it was Andy Staples, that this isn't Temple and Baylor. The situation's different. What I walked into at Temple was a program that, I don't want to say in shambles, but it was really struggling. Baylor wasn't shambles because of a scandal. Nebraska's not in shambles. I mean, I don't think what we saw last year after Commander and Frost had moved on, you saw a program that hung in there pretty well. And now you have a lot of those guys. Look at the depth chart. It's a pretty veteran depth chart. It's a lot of holdovers. I think there's 8 holdover players on offense and 9 on defense. Double check that. But there's 15 guys between the offense and defense that have 10 or more starts in their career. Now, not all at Nebraska, granted, but most of those guys are here. So I think it's a real appealing conversation. I know there's a lot of angst in this fan base, but I think right now, this is the type of season I think people could enjoy. Because you have this group of veteran players, a large group of veteran players, and they're very relatable. They're very likable guys. They're pretty good. There's some pretty good players in that group. But then on the by the same token, on the other side of it, you have this coach who's become pretty appealing to the fans. and we all know he's got to build a program. Those things can occur simultaneously. And this doesn't have to be a 2-10 season at Temple, which is, it's 2-10 in his first season there. I think it was pretty sure it was 1-11 his first season. But this isn't bad. That's not what we're looking at here. There's pretty good talent here. It looks like a team that can go 6-6. So I don't know, if I were in position just to be a flat out fan, I would find it pretty easy to cheer for these. I'm not going to name veteran names because there's too many to name, but cheer for these guys, knowing that, the program's not a finished product. Rule's still got work to do in building it and building the right mentality, all of that. But I just think it can be a somewhat enjoyable experience as that process, moves into its very early stages.
Steve Sipple from Husker Online and the On3 Network joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. One of the perks of being in radio on occasion, Sip, is that you get to go do some fun stuff. I don't know that there's more fun stuff than what you and Jake and Bill Bush got to do this past week. The one question that I have that I as soon as I saw the post and the photo, what was in your goodie bag backpack from the Nebraska Air National Guard? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything crazy. It was a water bottle.
I didn't know if you had like a Top Gun helmet in there or something.
I can't even say everything it was. I gave it to a grandchild, so
nice.
I'll tell you one thing. It's a hell of a nice backpack, and it is. I don't know why I gave it away. I mean, I really just out of the goodness of my heart. It was sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Impulse decision. Yeah. The young man, Alex, saw it, liked it, so you can have it. And it's one of those things where as soon as you say it, like, oh. But then it's over. I mean, there's no going back on that.
Yeah, you can't ask for it back now. I mean, you probably want it back, but you can't have it back because you gave it away.
It's gone.
Tell him that's what you want for Christmas is your backpack back.
I want my backpack. Yeah. It's a very handsome backpack. It's camouflage. It's perfect.
Stephen M. Sipple of Husker Online. I'm looking at the depth chart. Gunnar Gatula maybe comes out at me after Turner Corcoran. You got Sam Sledge, a couple of true freshman offensive linemen. You got Alex Bullock, the starter at wide receiver. Chief Borders, or I guess MJ Sherman could be your jack linebacker. Anything hits you when you look at the depth chart?
Yeah, it hit me. Anthony Grant's number 3, a legit number 3, no or. I thought he'd be 2, based on what Matt had said. But yeah, they slid him all the way down to number 3. I would say that's the number one thing that hit me. Keep in mind when you're looking at those ors that it's alphabetical. So they list it's in alphabetical order. So like Chief Borders, he's behind. I'm 98% certain he's behind MJ Sherman. I think MJ Sherman will be the guy out there first. Mm-hmm. And one other thing that struck me, a couple guys who weren't on there, namely, most notably, I guess, Elijah Judy. I don't think his name appears on it. It doesn't appear on the depth chart.
Nope.
I don't have it in front. But that's a little surprising that, he's a Texas A&M transfer. It's clear he just didn't have a very good camp. There's guys that slid in front of him or just, I don't know. I don't want to make it look like he lost the job, but he didn't win it. He didn't win a backup job. He didn't win a starting job. He's not even on a 2-team. So Ruquan Buckley, basically they're going with him over him. In a sense, you could say Cam Lenhart, he's ahead of him. I think Judy would be over the center, though. And I don't know that Lenhart would, so it depends how you want to stack it up. But anyway, those are the main things. That Grant is number 3, and that Judy's not on there at all.
Yeah.
Steve Sipple from Husker Online joining us here on 93.7 The Ticket. He is on the VIP line, brought to you by Aloe Fiber, where we understand the importance of exceptional service with local heart. Earlier this week, it was announced that Ted Carter is going to leave the University of Nebraska and move on to Ohio State. How big of an impact is this short-term and long-term in your mind?
Well, I mean, long-term, it's hard to answer that question
True.
because you don't know who the replacement will be. I always try to stay positive on things like this. Isn't it possible they could find someone as good or better than Ted Carter? I'd like to think so. Short term, I think it has minimal impact. I get it. People trying to make this a big deal. I just don't share it. Look, I respect what Ted Carter did. I do believe in alignment, that if the president, the chancellor, the AD, and the head coach are on the same page, it can be helpful, but it's usually in a sort of abstract way, right? I mean, it usually is during some maybe tumult, that occurs. It might be a head coach poking a guy in the chest at Texas A&M when there's 19 flags that fly that night. It just feels like the world's coming to an end. It could be anything. It could be an AD's leaving. It's good to have alignment above him. There's a lot of circumstances, but what I would say is that they have alignment, but it doesn't mean they're going to be out of alignment. They're just going to be missing a piece. And then they'll fill it. Yeah. So it's just what I find is, I get it. It's a significant story, but I was surprised that the tone had such doom in it out of the gate. I didn't get it, and I still really don't. And the other last thing I'd say is, if you ask somebody about it that has that doom in their voice, please tell me how it affects wins and losses. You won't get an answer because there's not one. They're just talking generalities, and it's very abstract.
Yeah.
And I don't really deal in that.
But it seemed like Ted Carter was a football guy. He had a pretty good understanding what was going on at the university, and Nebraska had misspent maybe more than any other college football program over the last several years, and maybe he was going to get that to be reined in, and then he takes the Ohio State gig. Maybe that was part of it, that he goes to Ohio State. I don't know.
Oh, I think that. I mean, I think people, they don't listen. We're a flyover state, all that. Nobody wants to look at us like a stepping stone, but it is Ohio State, and I don't think there was anything nefarious here. I mean, he was one of 100 candidates. My guess is that Ted just was surprised that it came down to him and whoever else,
Yeah.
So I get it. I mean, Ted's athletic background can be helpful. I mean, especially when you talk about league governance. But I imagine that will be one of the traits they look for in the next president.
Mm-hmm.
It can be just as good or better.
Steve Sipple of Husker Online and of Early Break. We love your show, by the way. Good stuff every single day. I listen to it all the time.
Well, same. Back at you, and I'm sorry it's a little late. I appreciate your pick.
That was our bet. Are you going to volleyball on Wednesday, or are you going right to Minnesota?
Going right to Minnesota. I think we're leaving at 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Sip. Hopefully during the season. Next time I'll give you fair warning. Stephen M. Sipple.
Safe travels,
Husker
Steve.
Online. Yes. Thank you, Steve. The best. And that was on me. That was not on Steve. That was totally on me. I blame myself. Let's get to break. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens. Mike Melby, former voice of the Lincoln Journal, not of the Lincoln Journal Star, but of course, the Lincoln Stars. I don't know why the Lincoln Journal Star keeps coming out of my mouth tonight. I guess I want to give him promotion. The Lincoln Journal Star. They do a great job. Steve Sipple was there. Amy Just was there. Mike Melby has never been there, but he's here tonight, and more of Husker Rewind is on the way.
Working at Continental in Lincoln isn't a job, it's a career. And right now, they've raised wages again, and they're hiring for production operators at $24.62 per hour, which grows to $28.97 per hour within 3 years. Skilled trade positions now start at $33.36 per hour, with opportunities to make more based on certifications. Continental also has salary jobs available and great benefits, plus medical and prescription costs at very low premiums. Dental, vision, and life insurance are offered at no premium cost to the associates with increased bonuses and vacation for new hires. To learn more or apply, go to continentaljobs.com with keyword Lincoln. Come work at Continental today.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
This is where it happens. Long hikes with friends, kayaking adventures with family, more horseback riding, zipline gliding, rock face climbing, hammock camping fun than you could ever imagine. And it's all outdoors, amongst the trees and across the prairie, here beneath Nebraska skies. Plan an outing today at yournebraskaadventure.com. Sponsored by Nebraska Game and Parks, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Back to school night is an important event. Plan to attend and help your child prepare for success. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. Let's get our students off to a great start. Make back to school night a priority. You'll meet your child's education team, learn about volunteer opportunities, and what you can expect in the school year ahead. Help us make a bright new beginning for our students this year.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
Serve Nebraska believes that volunteers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers from across the state who serve their communities in outstanding ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I've deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind.
Take it back now, y'all.
Hang down, flip it and reverse it.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. Mike Melby, former voice of the Lincoln Stars. And Tom Stevens, still just a voice of the ticket. I've never really done much of anything. But we have our Sunday show 5 to 7, every Sunday, 5 to 7, where we talk Husker football, basketball, and lots of volleyball as well.
You've never done much of anything else. You've been in radio for almost 40 years.
I can't remember what
You've called 19 different types of sports.
Oh,
You've been a rock jock, a morning show guy, an afternoon guy.
Oh, yeah, that. Nobody cares. Nobody really cares. But people do care about Husker volleyball, where the Huskers swept the weekend, Friday night over Utah State, Saturday over Lipscomb, and today over SMU, I should say, in the Emeritus Players Challenge is what it was. And I believe Tanya was there for all 3 games, or at least watched them. Hey, Tanya, Taki,
yes.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Yes, I did try and catch a couple games. I didn't get to every single thing, but it was a great way to start the weekend off. And I know a lot of other colleges can't say the same with a lot of upsets happening. So glad we made it to the weekend unscathed.
Tanya Taki, of course, one of the great middle blockers in Nebraska volleyball history, played for Terry Pettit. What do you think of this young core? No seniors on this team, but a load of talent.
Yeah, I mean, I feel excited and I'm like energized, and I mean, I'm ready to get behind all these players. There isn't any player out there that I'm just like, oh man, do we have to? You know, everybody just has a good vibe about them. Everybody's working hard. So, you know, just from the red-white scrimmage when everybody got to play, and then we got to see a lot of the different players come through with the different lineups for each of the games. It was exciting to see everyone, contribute in some way.
Tanya Taki joining us here on Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket. She joins us via the VIP line brought to you by Aloe Fiber, where we understand the importance of exceptional service with local heart. Tanya, Harper Murray, are you kidding? She was named the tournament MVP. Oh my gosh. Are you surprised at kind of how comfortable she is? She doesn't have a great match going yesterday, yet she figures out a way to serve 9 straight points and affect the game, even though things were not necessarily going her way earlier.
Yeah, I mean, she's kind of living up to the hype that everybody had been talking about. I think when you listen to Coach Cook talk about being able to have her first dance season and being able to take her to Brazil, and, this isn't her first match with us, if that makes any sense. Like, all the players have seen her, the coaches have seen her, and it's just the fans that just haven't had that much of a chance unless you watched it on that little teeny YouTube back and forth camera that they were doing in Brazil. This is our first shot of seeing her, and I think she's basically what Coach Cook has been saying this whole time is just she's the real deal. She's smooth. She's fast. She understands the game. She thinks quickly. Her blocking is amazing. I think she struggled a little bit being like the player that gets all of the serves. She didn't have the best passing game, but I think, that's something that we can definitely work on and adjust with. But I mean, everybody was just like, okay, let's go.
We didn't know who would win the setter job. We thought it might be Bergen Riley, and it was Bergen Riley. What'd you make of her game this weekend?
I mean, it was so refreshing. I was listening to John Baylor call, I think, the very first game, and he's just like, and the ball doesn't. Yes, Baylor, it's called setting. And we just kind of didn't have any in a little while. And so it was just so nice to have like a very high caliber setter, even though she's a freshman. She's just what other schools have, and we were just so envious of for the last couple of years here. And so I think it's just everybody's ready to get behind her, on board. Like, everything she does is just like, okay, yep, no problem. But even if it was an error, and then some of the great sets that she has, and she's pushing the tempo and she's forcing the middles, and she's got these great back sets, and she's connecting with our back row attacks like first match, and it's just like, okay, yes, let's do that.
Yeah, you mentioned JB. I want to take a quick second and say nothing but positive thoughts going to JB. He was not able to call the game today due to a family emergency, and we hope things are not bad for him. I don't know anything about it. I just want to make sure that we send some positive thoughts his way.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I definitely wanted to ask you about, I was stoked when Tom said that you'd be able to be on today, because after watching highlights of Becca Alec, Andy Jackson, and Maggie Mendelson, what does John Cook do at middle? Miss one of the best to ever play middle at Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of one of those things like you can never be too tall and you can never be too fast. I don't think you can ever have too many middles. I don't know that we've ever been in position to have 3 people who can do it at any point. Middle can be an interesting animal in that sometimes your timing is off. You're better to the right. You're better on a slide. You're better on a 1, whatever those things are. Sometimes the team that you're playing requires a different look. One of the things that Coach Cook said in the post game today was that Andy Jackson got beat on a couple overpasses just because she goes so high. And it's like, sometimes that's a problem when you're reaching over so high. So maybe when you're playing a smaller player, like when the game we were playing where there was a 5'8" hitter and she was using us, maybe a blocker that doesn't get over as high is going to be more effective. But then when you're going up against the Texas and the Stanfords and Wisconsin, where there's girls that are 6'8" that are able to reach, 10 feet, you need Andy Jackson out there, and so I think part of what he's going to do, he's saying he's going to rotate the middles. He's going to rotate the middles. But I also think as a coach, you're going to look at the other team and say, we need every ounce of height we can get against this girl. Let's make sure Andy's against her. And we need Becca's quickness here. And we need Maggie's, stability here, or those types of things. We can kind of manipulate where our middles are against the team that we're playing. So I think it just gives us another leg up to have 3 people who can step in and do anything.
Former Husker great Tanya Taki is our guest. So you've got three great middles. Andy Jackson has amazing athleticism. Mendelssohn's really tall and really pretty gifted. It seems like Alec is the starter, right? And then who's next?
Right. I mean, it's hard not to say, after the red-white game, I kind of, people like, who's your starting lineup? And I picked Andy Jackson and Becca Alec as my starting middles. However, I think the other thing that we have to just kind of keep in mind is that Andy Jackson can do some amazing things, but she also is like all arms and legs and pretty young. And she's also makes some weird decisions. And it's just like, oh my gosh, seriously? Maggie offers that like stability, if that makes sense. Like, what you're going to get from Maggie. She's been around the program now. This is her second year. I know she plays basketball. She's just an athlete. Like, she's just trustworthy, if that makes sense. And so I think you're going to see these middles show up in different scenarios just to offer support. Like, Andy needs a break, or Andy's not, out of her mind, or super nervous, or whatever is happening, or it's just not connecting with the setter. We can put Mendelssohn in and Andy can start the next game. Just having another person to just, balance her out a little bit is going to, help her develop as well.
Well, one of your hitters has got to be Harper Murray. Who's the other one? Is it Krause or Batenhorst?
Well, so I am a Krause fan, not just because I'm number 22 and she's number 22, but I like Krause's, I think she's got the grit. I think she's a little more consistent. For me as a coach, I have a hard time with Allie Batenhorst's swing. For me personally, she like pumps. I call it a double pump. She like pumps down, then lifts her elbow, then swings. So she's basically swinging twice on every ball. And it's hard for me as a coach to watch that because I just see like shoulder surgery, like that's what pops into my head when she does that. And so for me, I'm a Krause fan. However, I think Batenhorst, and I would also put Kubik in there too, that in the heat of a battle, Kubik can come in and use the block and just give them a different look. She's a smaller player. She doesn't reach as high. She just has a different timing. She's really smart. Like, she can come in and be a difference maker in a match where maybe it's the fourth set or maybe it's the second set where we just need some different energy, a different look to win this set out. I think you're going to see Hayden Kubik come in. I think you're going to see Allie Batenhorst come in. I think Krause is going to have somebody on her back all the time, and if she's not performing, Batenhorst is in. And I think either one of them can do the job. So it's going to be a sales job for Coach Cook to be like, hey, this is what we're doing, but be ready for your reps. Otherwise, they're going to be in the transfer portal next year. And I hate to say it because we just have so many good players, but it's like, what sales job is he going to be able to do to keep people in it, even though you're not getting 100% of the playing time?
Boy, that's one of those kind of behind the scenes stories that will be worth a follow for quite a while here. Tanya Taki joining us on the VIP line, brought to you by Aloe Fiber. One young lady we have not asked you about is the only one that came in via transfer from Florida, Merritt Beeson. What are your thoughts on her game through the first three matches?
Yeah, I mean, I think she came in a little nervous. I feel like for whatever reason, like, she just felt the pressure of the world. Like, I transferred here. I'm brand new. They voted me captain. Something about the pressure for her. I think she made quite a few errors on the right side. But what impressed me the most was just her connection with the setter on the back row attacks. She was a kill every time from the outside on serve receive on the one time that she does hit on the outside. I mean, listening to her in the press conference, she's saying all the right things. I definitely think that she's somebody that can carry this team on her back, just because we are so young, and she's like one of the oldest, most experienced, has the most accolades on our team coming in. She's not even returning to our team. She's returning to the game, the NCAA game. So I don't know. She just seemed a little tense to me, but I think she worked through it and made some good adjustments. Her blocking got better through the 3 games, and I think she just kind of settled in a little bit.
One of the great middle blockers of all time in Husker volleyball history. Are you going to be there on Wednesday, Tanya?
You know it.
Okay, you're going to be in the tunnel walk.
I'm going to be in the tunnel walk. I just got the email about the tunnel walk. That'll be exciting.
That is going to be ridiculous. That's going to be a crazy night. 93,000 is my prediction. I think the record is
90,138.
Yeah,
if I remember.
But
right.
the world record, all they had to do is 39, and they're good. I'll be 39. Right. So that'll be incredible. I'm glad you're involved in it. It's going to be a great night. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to get super excited because I'm not thinking too much about it until it happens, because I just feel like it's going to be like super emotional, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I mean, I remember being in the locker room with Coach Pettit and talking about, like, we were the very first NCAA tournament broadcast on ESPN, like the whole Final Four, and just things that he would say, like, hey, you guys are part of the beginning. Like, this is just the beginning of where volleyball is going to go. And my senior year was the last year of like the side out volleyball before the rally scoring, and changing it to rally scoring really put us on the map for being able to be broadcast on TV. And, you know, looking now on, they've even changed the NCAA tournament dates for the first time in ever Sunday so that it can be on ABC. And that'll be the first time of volleyball, an NCAA tournament game will be on ABC or any network. It's always been on ESPN. So I just think that it's just been a culmination of 25 years, 30 years of all the things that have been going on in women's sports in general. And it's just kind of all those emotions are going to be there on Wednesday. And so to have great weather, great teams, you know, they're doing all the things. They're making the T-shirts, having the tailgates, bringing in the sponsors. You know, there's going to be a lot of fanfare, and I'm trying not to get too worked up about it because I think it's just going to be a really cool event.
It's going to be amazing. Tanya Taki, one of the great middle blockers of all time in Husker volleyball history, played for both John Cook and Terry Pettit, both Hall of Famers, of course. And what a night it's going to be on Wednesday night. Can't wait for it. And we're going to have you here all year long, Tanya. So
sounds great.
Get ready. Get ready. It's going to be
okay.
fun.
I'm ready.
All right.
I'm excited. I got my tickets for Tampa already. I don't know that I feel like we're right there. If we could be, if we can just keep these freshmen, you know, getting that experience, I think we could be a top 4 team this year.
Wow. We'll can't wait to have you again. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
There he is. There she is. Tanya Taki, one of the great middle blockers of all time. They're going to have players from every decade, starting back from the 70s, that'll be there and involved in the tunnel walk. I think like 95 players will be involved in this thing. In fact, it's incredible. Getting Memorial Stadium ready for this. It's not quite Garth Brooks, where they brought in 50 trucks, but 17 trucks, 2 stages involved in this thing. And of course, they're gearing up for the post-match concert with Scotty McCreery as well. There'll be a flyover with 2 F-16 fighter jets, all the former players involved. Jordan Larson, Kelsey Robinson, Justine Wong, Arantes will not be there. Apparently, they're in training for a tournament in California. They're Olympians, so they have other duties, but recruits will be there. Skylar Pierce, the number 1 recruit, I believe, in the country.
Yep.
Will be there. Olivia Munch will be there. Ryan Hunter will be there. So it's a full crowd of recruits and all the players. What an emotional night. What a great night it's going to be at Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, and there's a breakdown. It ran in both the World Herald and the Journal-Star of exactly what went into building the stage that the court will sit on and all the stuff they had to do. And it's kind of a behind the scenes look before it actually happens of all the prep work. And a gentleman by the name of Matt Davidson with a D, not that Matt Davison, but because there's Davison with no D. Right. And at any rate, Matt Davidson.
I know them both. Well, I don't know the other Davidson. I know Davison.
Yeah, he is in charge of the whole thing. And man, it was one heck of an undertaking. And a fascinating story. If you get a chance to read it.
They get a practice on Tuesday night on the court from 6 to 8. And Scotty McCreery will play for 75 minutes after the second match. There's one at 4, of course, and then Nebraska takes on Omaha at 7 o'clock. But quite a night. It's going to be ridiculous. I guess there's a lot involved putting the stage together because it's an oval field, so it doesn't really balance. You have that crown to work around.
Yep.
And I guess they had a practice setting up the stage. And it was on one of those really hot days of last week. And then they said the stage got to be like 110 degrees. So they had to kind of figure it out because you don't want a lot of humidity on that volleyball court. I'm
No,
guessing.
and so they're actually talking about possibly putting cooling fans out to try to help. Obviously, they're going to have a ton of people that are doing with towels and mops to try to make sure. They added some plywood for stability and sturdiness of the court. So a heck of an undertaking, and just major props to the crew that are a part of this. They're getting
There was a dress rehearsal just for the tunnel walk. I mean, they're trying to get every detail right.
Yeah,
it
that's
looks like the
actually
weather's
Tuesday.
going to be good. Yeah. There's going to be a dress rehearsal on Tuesday, as you mentioned, for the tunnel walk. So they want to get this thing right, and it's going to be great. Because as we mentioned, everything that John Cook touches is just great. He's pretty good at these things. I think it was still kind of gutsy because a lot could go wrong, but it looks like everything's going to go right. I mean, including the weather, and that was the big concern.
Well, yeah, the weather, boy, I'll tell you what, heat index of 120 when they tip off would be really bad.
That would not be fun.
But
I don't think I would go. I think I would stay home.
Yeah, I know I'm not going anyway, but it's that's a bit much. But right now, I got to pull it up. But they're talking about 86 for a high on Wednesday, and light southeast winds, 10 to 15 miles an hour, and then Wednesday night clear at a low of 63. So you'd figure that about 7 o'clock when the first serve goes in the air for Nebraska and UNO, it's probably going to be in, roughly mid 80s, 83, 4, 5, and probably a heat index around 90.
Actually, the first game might be a little hot. But the second game, which they're calling an exhibition for the first game anyway. So the second game will count against Omaha, Nebraska versus Omaha at 7 o'clock at Memorial Stadium. Mitch Sherman writes for The Athletic, and he writes about Nebraska football for The Athletic, and he's really good at it, just like Steve Sipple is. We haven't had him on yet this year. We've had him on before, and he's great. Mitch Sherman is coming up next.
On the block with Strick and Austin.
Donnie Nelson kind of was doing a little, backyard boogieing with Mark,
on the side.
With Mark Cuban in the background. Moves are being done and things are happening to which you don't really know about. That seems to me what happened in this situation. Things were going on, conversations was being had at the highest levels, and you're not in on the party.
Weekdays from 2 to 4 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, talk to doctor now and share it. Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Veterans, do you know what local, state, and federal benefits and services you're eligible to receive? Do you want help navigating the application or appeals process? Speak to your county veteran service officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. You've served our country, now let us serve you. Visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Tom Stevens, Mike Melby, Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic on the line. You've been covering Nebraska football for a long time, Mitch. How would you rank Matt Rule as far as coaches you've covered, as far as, writing stories after you cover them?
So we're ranking him as far as his media friendliness. Is that the
I don't know.
basis here?
How about I want to throw that? How about a combination of media friendliness, but just interesting to write about?
Yeah. Well, he's very close to the top as far as coaches at Nebraska with the ease with which I can deal with him. It's an enjoyable process.
Yeah.
I'll say that because when he talks, he says interesting things, and most coaches don't. Most coaches like to speak and say not very much.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to give anything away, and it's a game. It's kind of a strategy to just keep things as top secret as possible, and it's not the vibe I get from Matt Rule. I think he's pretty transparent in the way that he runs his program. He has his talking points, that's for sure, and there's a benefit for him to be able to use the media in that way to get out the messaging that he wants, and that's a healthy way to do it. I think that's a very beneficial to a program method to go about these interview sessions and his post-practice media availability, the press conference that he had on Friday at the start of game week. He very much uses this in a way to the benefit of his program. And, it's also beneficial to those of us who stand around and listen to him because he gives you something to dig into.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic joining us on the VIP line, brought to you by Aloe Fiber, where we understand the importance of exceptional service with local heart. All the single-digit numbers are out. A handful of black shirts are out. I know the three newest members of the single-digit club were all wearing black shirts earlier today: Ty Robinson, Quentin Newsom, and Deshaun Singleton. But with the fact that those 10 numbers are now out and only 2 of them are on offense, is that anything to sit there and go, that's a little peculiar, a little worrisome? Or is it just kind of one of those things where we've got some really vocal guys on the defensive side of the ball?
You kind of think as defensive guys is tougher anyway, and that's what this is. It's the toughest players on the team. I think in most years you're going to see this as more of a split, and I wouldn't say it's ideal that you've only got 2 guys on the offensive side. Now, really, there's 3 because Ethan Piper was voted the same distinction as the single-digit players. You just can't wear one as an offensive lineman. So he has all the criteria that the other 2 on offense, Jeff Sims and Billy Kemp, received. I was a little surprised to not see Gabe Ervin in this last batch, but I think that does speak to the attitude that Tony White has brought to this program and the way that his defensive players have responded over these past several months. I thought coming out of spring practice that was one of the number one storylines, just how well the defense appeared to mesh and Tony White's immediate impact on the program. And then, you get into the months of May and June and July, and it's August again, and practice starts. And there's just this tendency always to focus on the offense because that's where they score the points, and that's the sexier side of the ball. And here we are headed into the first game. I think we're being reminded again just how much progress the defense has made through this offseason, or apparently. We'll find out on Thursday night if it's real and the defense has been a step ahead. I think it will. The defense is going to come out of that game, and we're going to be saying on Friday or Thursday night late that it is the bright, shining point of this team right now. And the questions will be, how does the offense catch up? And where does this team, where does it leave this team if the defense is this many steps, X number of steps ahead of the offense? I don't know if it's going to be a couple of steps ahead or if it'll be 8 or 9 steps ahead. And that's, I think, going to determine the way a lot of the first half of this season goes.
Mitch Sherman of The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter, our guest. Matt Rule was asked the question, where do you think you'll excel? What's do you think will be the strong point? I can't remember how the question was phrased exactly, but he says he thought that's a good question. And then he said, I think we'll be physical. I don't think we'll panic if it doesn't go well to start the game. I don't think we'll celebrate if it does go well. Is there something that you think that Nebraska will do well? Is it back to defense for you?
I would go there. I think the question was, what do you feel confident about going into the first game?
Okay.
And I feel confident that the defense is going to look, what's the right way to put this? It's more than just that the defense is going to play well. I think the defense is going to set the tone for Nebraska on Thursday night. And this team can go early in the season as far as that defense can take them. I don't think they're going to get gouged by Minnesota. I don't think that, Minnesota is going to go up and down the field and score 42 points. And if they do score 42 points, it's because the offense is making a bunch of mistakes and there's special team issues. And that'll be, that's a worst case scenario. But no, I think that I feel confident that the defense is going to set the tone in this game for Nebraska. And again, like I said previously, it's a matter of, okay, now where's the offense at and how much of their end can they hold up?
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic joining us here on Husker Rewind at 93.7 The Ticket on the VIP line, brought to you by Aloe Fiber. Mitch, one of the things that you briefly mentioned, I'm going to paraphrase what you just said because I like the term. I don't like it because if it's applied to Nebraska special teams, but if special teams happen to be a dumpster fire and we do not play well, that is a bad thing. Are you concerned with what you're hearing about the special teams right now?
We're not hearing a ton. We're hearing that they've got a lot of fast young players, and those guys are going to have opportunities to compete early on special teams. We've heard some about the kickers and how they've been inconsistent, the field goal kickers in putting the ball through the uprights. Although I think some of that is just trying not to get the hopes too high. If in fact it is Tristan Alvano, they went into Friday, at least according to the coaches, in a situation where the two of them were still even and duking this thing out, and some of that could have been determined by now through the practices over the last couple of days. Today being Sunday is like a Tuesday of game week, so it should have been a pretty heavy practice today. Maybe they made some steps in full pads toward figuring out that kicking situation today. There would have been special teams work done today. I feel good about the punter. I feel fairly good about the return specialist. So no, I wouldn't say I'm going into this game feeling like that's a part of the team that is set up to struggle. I don't think they're going to come out and be dominant on special teams in week one with the new coaching regime. Sometimes when there's coaching change, special teams can get left behind a little bit in year one. But I don't think that's going to be the case with Matt Rule, with as much attention to detail as he puts into his job, and the fact that he hired a special teams coordinator, Ed Foley, from day one to run just that area of the team. I think that they'll be okay there, and I think they can. I think they can go toe to toe with Minnesota and perhaps even win that aspect of the game.
Mitch Sherman of The Athletic, our guest. Last week, Matt Rule, I believe, said there's going to be a depth chart. It's going to be real. When we get the depth chart, Sipple, when we talked to him last hour, said his biggest surprise with the depth chart, Anthony Grant at number 3. Is that yours? Is that your biggest surprise?
It would have been a surprise if we didn't hear on the Saturday before that Anthony Grant had been having some fumble issues. And the question was asked about the running back order on that previous Saturday, so just 6 days before the depth chart came out. And Matt Rule said right away, Gabe Irvin's the guy. He's the number 1 back. And at that point, Ramir Johnson had missed a little bit of time with an injury. So I thought, yeah, you're going to see Anthony Grant on that number 2 line. As it came out, it was number 3, and the explanation was given even before the depth chart came out that Anthony has been having a hard time hanging on to the ball. So some of the messaging that we'd received in the days leading up to the depth chart coming out made me not as surprised. But yeah, if we got that a week before, that would have been a pretty big shock because I thought Anthony Grant earlier in camp was pushing even to be like maybe a co-number one guy with Irvin. And I think eventually Anthony Grant, if he can hold on to the ball, which, I don't think it's a chronic issue with him, will get time. She'll share time with Irvin, and then Ramir Johnson is more the third down back. But a little bit surprised with that. Otherwise, they had kind of let most of the stuff out. Like just a couple days before the depth chart came out, Matt Rule was on the radio talking about Deshaun Singleton, and we saw him with the single-digit jersey today, and he's on the starting line as a safety. That would have surprised me quite a bit 3 or 4 days before the depth chart came out, but Rule had kind of taken care of that one. Maybe the 2 true freshmen as backups, as number 2 guys on the offensive line, Gunnar Gatula and Sam Sledge. That surprises me just from the standpoint that they ought to have, they want to be in a position down the road where they have more depth than having to go with true freshmen if, there's one misstep by the left tackle or one misstep by an offensive lineman. You don't want to be in a position against Minnesota in week 1 and have to send a true freshman out there. I understand Gatula has been with the team since January, but you'd like to see that guy be able to redshirt and ease his way into a backup role maybe next year.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic joining us on the VIP line, brought to you by Aloe Fiber. Mitch, I was going straight to the offensive line with the next question. I'm not going to get into details. Tell me your thoughts. What do you think the offensive line is going to look like this year?
Well, other than the depth issues, I feel good about things. And then, that's maybe a little surprising if you've not followed the offseason closely and you're coming off of last year and this offensive line, gave up 30 some sacks and 3.5 yard per carry rushing average. They weren't good numbers. They were ugly. And it was an ugly season last year for the offensive line. But I think there have been enough things in this offseason that have trended up for the offensive line that I like where they're at as a starting 5, maybe a starting 5 plus a couple of players. And they're working Teddy Prohaska back in. I don't think we'll see him much, if at all, on Thursday night. Maybe the Colorado game, maybe even more likely Teddy Prohaska gets back into the mix when they come home for Northern Illinois on September 16th. But, good that he's not out long term and he's back at practice. So across the starting group, they've got a lot of experience. They've got new pieces in Ben Scott and then a returning piece in Nuri Nuili, who wasn't a part of this thing last year. So those are both upgrades, significant upgrades. I mean, guys with NFL potential who are in starting positions. I think Turner Corcoran's finally in a spot where he can be comfortable and stay at one position, and at least until Prohaska comes back, and we'll see then what they do at left tackle. And I like what they've got, with Ethan Piper. He seems to have really taken it up a notch too. And we'll see with Bryce Benhart at right tackle. He's a guy that has transformed the way that he looks, along with some others on the offensive line. So I think it's a group that has the potential to be more improved than anywhere else they're at on the team from last November when we saw this team against Iowa till Thursday night when they take the field in Minneapolis.
Mitch Sherman of The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. PJ Fleck has definitely had Nebraska's number. He's 5-1 against the Huskers, but it's Matt Rule now. What might Nebraska fans lean on if they think this thing is going to get turned around? What would they be confident about?
As it relates specifically to Thursday, or just Matt Rule in general?
Changing what has been against Minnesota in particular.
The trend against Minnesota, yeah. Well, it's a different system for Nebraska. It's a different offensive system. It's a different defensive system. PJ Fleck, you're right. He had Scott Frost's number. And last year, it was Mickey Joseph in the interim chair when Nebraska played Minnesota. He's had the number of this last regime at Nebraska. So maybe a change can be of benefit for Nebraska. And the games have been close the last couple of years. They've been 7-point games. So it's not like Minnesota's just running all over Nebraska. But they've definitely, you think back to the game in Lincoln in 2020 when Minnesota just really almost had no business being on the field. They were down so many players and still they found a way to gut that game out and win it. I mean, it was just a real emotional win for Minnesota, and one that spoke, I think, really to to the attitude and the kind of toughness that PJ Fleck has built there in his 6 seasons. They've just been tougher than Nebraska. And I think this is a program and a team at Nebraska now with Matt Rule that every football team is going to say they want to be tough and stress toughness. I think that he's going to breathe that into this group more than what we've seen in recent years. I think they're going to be better positioned in the long term. I don't know about Thursday night. I think they're going to be better positioned as a program in the long term to stack up well against teams like Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa. Yeah. And, we'll see. We'll see if they can get them going in that direction right out of the gate. That's a tough challenge for sure.
That it is. Mitch Sherman, before we let you go, I want to ask you a quick question, not about football, but about what's going to happen at Memorial Stadium on Wednesday night. Just your overall impression on the cojones it took for the University of Nebraska powers that be to go, hey, let's just go ahead and try to break a world record for attendance at a women's sporting event and what they're doing with the gamble, with weather, everything else. But your thoughts on Wednesday night volleyball day in Nebraska?
Yeah, I think Nebraska will break that record. I think they're going to have set a world record and get, in excess of 91,000 people into that stadium. And, they did get fortunate. Well, knock on wood, we'll see. It can always rain in Nebraska when you're not expecting it, but things look good. Cross your fingers. And it was a big gamble because there's so much that went into this, the planning and just everything they had to do in building out that venue, to think that there was a real possibility when they got into all of the design and the planning that they were just going to have to shut it down and move over to Devaney and play in front of 8,000 people. What a tremendous letdown that would be if you have to scale it back in that way. So it did take some guts for sure to do this. And if they're able to pull it off and the weather holds out, it's going to be a tremendous celebration and a tremendous achievement that the athletic department was able to do this. And, now that the volleyball team has made it through this weekend and, cleared that hurdle and they're 3-0 as people expected. And everybody is seemingly healthy and survived opening weekend, they can really turn their full attention toward Wednesday. And it's going to be something that I think all of the people who were involved in all 4 of those teams, that they're going to remember forever, just that they were a part of something. Even if you're in the UNK Wayne State game and there's only 20 or 30,000 people in the seats, you're going to remember that forever. And then certainly if you're playing in front of 90,000 on Wednesday night, wow. What an experience for anybody who's a part of that. And I think it'll be an experience just to be there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Mitch, always enjoy reading your stuff. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Mitch Sherman of The Athletic. He does write great stuff at Mitch Sherman on Twitter, but read his stuff. He writes great Nebraska football stuff, and he has for, 20 years.
Well, yeah, he was with the World Herald for a while and then went to ESPN and now with The Athletic. And he's exactly right. I was fortunate enough to be around in, I believe it was 2014 when the Lincoln Stars, Omaha Lancers played before the UNO Mavericks in North Dakota, at the time Fighting Sioux, at TD Ameritrade at the time. Now Charles Schwab Field, but the outdoor game. It was a surreal experience. It was a total failure with the ice in the Stars game.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when you sit back and look at it, everything it took to be a part of that, even though I had no part in setting up, all I did is call the stupid game, right? But it just being there, being a part of it, unbelievable.
Could you imagine in the interview with Terry Pettit when John Cook was applying for the job? Oh, and by the way, one day I'd like to have a game at Memorial Stadium and draw, 91,000. Pettit would have said, okay, you're crazy. You're nuts. And I'm going to call this other guy.
Or he may have gone, when do you want to do it?
Let's go. That Pettit probably was.
Actually, I was going to say, I think Terry Pettit would have been like,
he was probably enough of a
Let's
visionary that, yeah. Actually, Tom Osborne was the one who came up with the idea when they had the best volleyball venue in the country when they were at the Coliseum.
Yeah.
And it was Tom Osborne that went to Terry Pettit and said, you know what? We should move to the Devaney Center.
Let's double what we can put in for people.
I think it scared Pettit a little, or not Pettit, but John Cook at that time a little bit more. But after doing that, he probably just thinks, what can we do?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So
it's going to be incredible that they're going to set a world record. I think they're going to do it. They're going to do it. I want to get your predictions for the season. We're going to go through win totals and conference champion. Who do you think is going to win the conference? And then maybe even a national champ.
I have a surprise on my national championship prediction.
Ooh, we'll do that. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens, more after this. It's Husker Rewind.
At Fairway Meat Market, your family, and as part of the family, they want to save you money on your meat and groceries. This week, enjoy 8-ounce USDA Choice Boneless New York Strip for just $6.99 each. All natural thick-cut Iowa pork chops for $1.99 per pound, and fresh, never frozen Atlantic salmon fillets for just $9.99 per pound. That's all at Fairway Meat Market in the Rockledge Square Shopping Center, just south of 84th and Van Dorn.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and text us,
If you love them enough to turn on your music and pretend like their music is your music,
This is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
I kind of think you should be dancing to this one. I know I have no moves.
I am chair dancing. I've got a few moves, but they're not good. I tried to, for a while, I tried to learn to dance just two-step because I was, back in the day, you would date people and they could dance and you couldn't. So I took dancing lessons. And remember the Dodens? They would the Playmore. They would teach dancing at the Playmore. So I took dancing lessons from Roberta Doden in her garage. And after 3 lessons, she goes, I just don't know if I can help you.
I had somebody that told me that I am the definition of not rhythm.
Not rhythm. Is that a new dance?
I'm like,
that's
you.
a new non-dance.
Yeah.
Dance.
Yeah, dancing is not.
I'm more of a free-for-all. I like to just get out there and move around.
Yeah.
Not well, again, but I can do it.
All right. So we're 4 days away from kickoff of Nebraska football season. College football kicked off this past weekend. And it is time for all of us experts that have we're fortunate enough to have a microphone in front of us, and we get to say, I know more than Tom does, and my predictions are going to be right. Take it to the bank.
Can I do this?
It's time now for the picks of density.
Because it's a
Wait, it says density on here.
On your density.
Oh, I get it. Because your picks carry a lot of weight, right?
That's some heavy shit, man.
All right, let's roll with it. The picks of density.
We'll do predictions on various games throughout the season. There are no good games really for this week.
Well, there's one.
There's
Nebraska,
one.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Outside of that, I mean, you got Nebraska versus Minnesota. You got Rutgers, Northwestern. You got Ohio State, Indiana within the league. But there aren't a lot of good games, even nationally. But I would like to go through win totals for the season for Nebraska football.
I was the definition of not rhythm. I think Rutgers Northwestern football is the definition of not good football.
That's right. Oh, my goodness. Those two teams might just tie at 0-0.
Yeah, and then celebrate.
That's right. Last year's – the only win that Northwestern had last year was against Nebraska. Let that sink in. They were 1-11.
The two caveats, trivia out of that game, Pat Fitzgerald's last win as the Northwestern head coach was that game, and Scott Frost's last Big Ten game as a coach was that game. So,
my goodness. So Nebraska opens this Thursday at Minnesota. I don't want to score. Does Nebraska win or lose that game?
I will give you a score, 17-14. I've said it for a while. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be close, and I think one of the two teams is going to have somebody make a kick to win it, 17-14. And I am going to play glass half full, optimistic guy. I'm going to say Tristan Alvano nails a 45-yarder to win it for Nebraska.
I would be so
Minnesota.
Pleased. I think Minnesota finds a way to win that game because they have – PJ Fleck is really good against Nebraska. I know it was Scott Frost that he dominated, and this is a new era. I do think it'll be close, but I have Minnesota winning that game in a close one. At Colorado, how do you feel about that one?
I think it's going to be a dominant performance by Nebraska, hands down.
I think I saw the ESPN predictions on every game. Nebraska, I was surprised. They had like a 37% chance to beat Minnesota, which I thought was rather high. But like a 58 or 62% chance to beat Colorado.
Yeah, that one, score-wise, I'm going to throw out something like 38-10.
I think they beat Colorado, and I think they beat them 24-10.
Yeah.
Northern Illinois at home, that's a win, right?
Yep, guaranteed win there.
La Tech
Hopefully.
at home, that's a win, right?
Yep.
Michigan at home, I've got a loss there.
I think it's a loss, but I also think we learn a lot. I think we learn more from that game than we do any other game all season about what Matt Rule's teams are going to look like at Nebraska.
I think one of the most crucial games of the year, one of the most important games of the year is at Illinois. I think Nebraska is striving to play a little bit like Brett Bielema is playing at Illinois. Run the ball, strong defense, milk the clock maybe a little bit. I don't know necessarily. I think Nebraska has a more dynamic quarterback than what Illinois does, and I think they'll have more weapons than Illinois. But I do have that as a loss at Illinois.
I do as well.
Northwestern, that's a guaranteed win. Circle it. Nebraska will beat the smithereens out of Northwestern. That's a win.
Completely agree.
Purdue, I have that as a win with Troy Walters. I'm not convinced.
I do as well. It's at home. First-year head coach for Purdue, and I think the Nebraska program is a heck of a lot further along than what Purdue's is now that Jeff Fromm is at Louisville.
How good is Mel Tucker? I don't know. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're terrible. But I do have that at Michigan State as a loss.
I do too. It's a 50-50 game. It's 21-21 going with 2 minutes to go. Somebody's going to go down and kick a field goal. I'm going to say that one's probably going to be Michigan State.
Remember that cold game, 96 game? That might have been Frost's best win.
Yeah, it was.
Either that. Yeah, I think it might have been his best win. Maryland at home.
Got to be a win.
That's got to be a win, I think, as well. I don't have a lot of confidence in what they're building at Maryland. I know Mike Loxley's done some good things, but I just don't see it going anywhere over the long haul. At Wisconsin,
loss.
I have a loss as well. And then Iowa to finish the season at home.
I've got that one, another 50-50 game, and I'm going to say it gets decided in overtime. I have no idea who wins. But
I have Nebraska winning that game and going 7-5.
I'm going to go 7-5, 8-4. I don't know. There's three what I would call 50-50 games: Michigan State, Iowa, and Minnesota. And those are my saying they're 50-50 games, not most prognosticators, because most people think Minnesota's going to win. But if Nebraska gets 2 of the 3, they're 8-4. If they get 1 of the 3, they're 7-5. And if they lose all 3, I think they're 6-6.
Your conference champion in the Big Ten.
In the Big Ten, I am going to take Michigan in the East. I'm going to take Minnesota in the West.
All right.
With Michigan winning the final Big Ten title in the conference championship game.
Oddly enough, even though I picked Nebraska to beat Iowa, I think Iowa wins the West. I have Michigan winning the East and winning the conference and winning the national title.
I have Michigan losing in the title game after they knock off either Georgia or Alabama, who are the other 2 teams that make up 3 of the 4 in the final 4-team championship college football playoff. I have USC and Lincoln Riley as the national champions.
A couple things before that's our picks of density, and we'll do them all season long. When we have better games, we'll pick game by game, but we'll do a lot of Big Ten games this year. Do you see? Well, obviously your Cowboys have had him for a couple weeks now, or has it been longer than that?
Just a couple of days, I think.
Just a couple of days. Trey Lance is now with the Cowboys, so you can't call him a bust yet. Can you call him a bust yet if he's still playing in the league?
No, you can't. And I know we're up against time, and I want to get to this. And Tom, I'm going to make a note of this because this is a subject I want to talk about next week. Oogie on the Starter Heyman text line asked us, and we just don't have time to get to it this week. We will next week. How do you both think the conference expansion is going to affect volleyball and other Husker sports outside of football?
Ooh.
I think that's a great topic.
That is.
So we're gonna get to that. But
there were a lot of things we couldn't get to. We had 3 guests tonight.
Yeah, but no, Trey Lance, he's not Cooper Rush.
I think it's too early to call him a bust. But
he's not Ryan Leaf yet.
You know, he signed for $28 million. He had 4 starts in San Francisco. That's $7 million a start.
Yeah, it's a good gig if you can get it.
Before we leave, I have one get off my lawn, and it goes to Spencer Steer, Cincinnati left fielder, had the ball in his glove, but a home run stolen by a little kid who also had a glove. He jumped over the wall, had the ball in his glove, and the kid also had a glove, scooped it out of his glove, and stole the home run away. Arizona's Tommy Pham hit the ball in the 7th inning, had the home run, but because of fan interference,
it's called out.
He was called out. But you can't have the ball taken away by a 10-year-old. So get off my lawn, Mr. Steer.
Get off my lawn.
That's on the adult in that case. You can't. Well, that 10-year-old took my ball.
My get off my lawn is just the general to all the people that were complaining about the Blue Angels this week, putting on the air show.
How can you complain about that? They were great.
I had some neighbors that were like, don't they understand people are trying to sleep? They're disrupting my. Yeah, you know what? I get it. They fly low. They make a lot of noise, all that type of stuff. But come on, get off my lawn.
Finish line should be a good show.
Finish line is going to be awesome. I'm going to let you in on all the fun that I had last night as part of the tow crew out at Eagle Raceway. Jumping on the tow trucks and trying to make sure that all the wrecks got taken care of, and a lot of other things, man. That's a pretty in-depth thing. Plus, we've got Cole Newhalfen that is going to be in studio. He is the crew chief for the 2022 Eagle Raceway track champion in sprint cars. He also helps out a guy with the World of Outlaws named Carson Macedo, but he'll be in studio, and it's going to be a fantastic show.
Is it too early to say where we'll be doing our show next week?
Oh, no, it's a done deal. Next week, we will be live pre-race at Eagle Raceway between 4 and 5. Oh, wow. I've already got lined up, a whole lot of guys, including 2023 track champion Tyler Drucke. He took the title home last night. He is going to be over and talking to us. One of the guys that was in a fight at Eagle Raceway last night is going to be over with us.
That should be required every week, at least one fight.
There probably is. Trevor Grossenbacher is going to be on. Mike Boston's going to be on. I think Nick Bryan's going to be on. We've got a whole slew of guests, but then you and I are going to do our show live from Eagle Raceway from 5 to 7. We're going to have a slew of guests. I know Amon Green's going to be out there. We're going to have a couple other guys.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know who he is. But Amon's going to jump in a 2-seater and go around the racetrack. And then from 7 to 8, the finish line, we'll do kind of a back half where the races for the Race Saver Nationals Championship night will already be underway. But we'll put a bow on that show. We'll still have some more drivers coming over, crew guys. We're going to have tow truck guys. We're going to have Eagle Raceway employees, maybe even the parts trailer people. We don't care. But it's going to be a live show, basically 4 hours of live sports talk out at Eagle Raceway next week for the Race Saver Nationals. Going to be a fantastic time.
Mike, great show. We'll talk again next Sunday night, 5 to 7, hopefully after a Husker win on Thursday night. Going to be at the volleyball match on Wednesday night. So a lot to talk about next week. Tanya Taki will maybe be with us once again, hopefully on the phone line. The finish line is next. Mike is staying. I'm leaving. See you next week.
Ready to upgrade your combine with new technology to make your harvest more efficient, meaning more money in your pocket? The team at Landmark Implement is here to help find the right combine for harvest. Plus, when you purchase a pre-owned combine from Landmark, you are backed by Landmark's extensive parts and service network, along with mobile techs and parts drop